Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and salam sejahtera. Let me introduce our group members. My name is Haikal Muazzam Shah and my group members is Iqbal Daniel, Muhammad Farhan, Nazmi Aiman, Marina Nabila, Nur Ain Irdina and Muhammad Fazrik. We want to present about unemployment and inflations in Japan. So, let's start from introductions.
First, I will talk about introduction. According to UN figure, Japan's population in 2020 will be 126,476,461 people. Japan's population accounts for 1.62% of the global population. In 2020, Japan's total labor force is expected to reach 68.7 million people. Despite Japan's aged population, the labor force has increased by more than 500,000 people since year 2000. 1.1 The main activity in Japan. First, export car, which its amount is 103 billion US dollar. Second, vehicle part are 36.3 billion US dollar. Third, integrated circuit are 13.9 billion US dollar. And fourth, machinery having individual function are to 23.1 billion US dollar. Private expenditure, which makes up more than half of the economy, climbed by 2.2% in the fourth quarter of 2020, down from 5.1% the previous quarter. In the third and the fourth quarter, stronger global economic development benefit Japanese company in selling more products abroad. Japan is on track for a robust and speedy rebound with annualized growth of 12.7%, assuming the quarter growth is sustained for the entire year. Next, 1.2 Economic growth. The Japanese economy grew well in the fourth quarter of 2020. In comparison to the same period last year, the economy increased by 3% between October and December, exceeding forecasts. The pace of expansion was slower than the preceding quarter, when GDP increased by 5.3%. Japan's GDP decreased by 4.8% this year, the first time it has fallen since 2009. The news came as Japan Nikkei index briefing reached 30,000 for the first time since 1919. Between April and June, the world's third large economy had its worst quarterly drop since World War II as the global pandemic affected domestic consumption and exports.
So next, the current issue. The current issue is the COVID-19 pandemic. Japan was set to host the 2020 Olympics, which would have given the country a major economic boost. But the coronavirus hit, causing the Olympics to be postponed until the summer of 2021. Japan's economy was on the edge of a recession due to a decline in Chinese demand for Japanese goods and weaker consumer spending as the coronavirus spread. The Bank of Japan raised its stimulus measures for the second month in a row in April after the Japanese government announced a 1 trillion stimulus plan. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has pledged to continue funding spending initiatives aimed at reducing the economic effect of the epidemic. So the next topic of current issue is increase in sales tax. In October 2019, Japanese customers were slapped with an increased sales tax from 8% to 10%. The government increased the sales tax to fund social welfare programs like pre-kindergarten education and to help pay down the country's massive debt. The government took the efforts to mitigate the negative impact on spending, including reimbursements for purchase made using electronic payments. Consumers were entitled to a 5% rebate on purchase made at some smaller firms utilizing electronic payments, thereby cancelling out the 2% tax rise. And the last one for the current issue is exports are decreasing. Japan exports have been suffering from a drop in global demand. Manufactured goods export decreased 23.8% in May compared to the same month a year ago, while manufacturing production fell 25.9%. Tourism is a vital part of the Japanese economy, but it has been badly harmed by the pandemic, which has deterred overseas visitors. A wave of protectionism is impacting Japanese foreign trade prospects, perhaps decreasing global trade volumes.
I will continue with the types of inflation and unemployment. This country's type of inflation is demand pull inflation and cost push inflation. Based on the data, the current rate of inflation reaching 0% in the year 2020. Japan has low inflation because the exports activities are more than its import. As a result, there is little international debt. A rise in production costs resulting in a price increase, whereas the latter refers to an increase in aggregate demand as a result of changes in consumption, investment, and government expenditure. An increase in the cost of production decreases the ability of the producer to produce more product, thus decreasing in aggregate supply, and the aggregate supply curve will shift leftward. In Japan, which has been experiencing deflation for a long time, a decrease in the money supply, an increase in the supply of products, a decline in the demand for goods, and an increase in the demand for money are all common causes of deflation. Excessive expenditure increase is the primary source of this inflation. Price pressure will be exerted on prices if demand exceeds supply. Price levels will only grow as a function of aggregate demand after the economy's income level achieve full employment. Japan's inflation rate has fluctuated and risen in recent years. It tended to increase through the year 2015 until 2020, and the period ending at 0% in 2020. Despite the fact that the present rate of inflation is 0%, there is a potential that prices of products and services may fall. The Japanese economy is primarily dependent on higher salaries being provided to domestic workers and an increase in their desire to spend more in order to ensure self-sustaining economic recovery. There are two forms of unemployment: cyclical unemployment and frictional unemployment. When Japan's jobless rate increased, the country's unemployment issues started from negative 5.82% to 18.41%. In the year 2020, the highest unemployment rate was recorded. This occurred as a result of the pandemic COVID-19, which gave a negative impact on the economy and businesses in Japan. Cyclical unemployment determines the types of unemployment that occur in Japan. It is because cyclical unemployment, also known as demand-deficient unemployment, is caused by a lack of demand during a business cycle downturn or economic recession. COVID-19 is one of the primary reasons why Japan's economy and others companies are slowing down, and some firms have been forced to lay off staff to reduce their obligations. To some, the pandemic COVID-19 caused an economic downturn in Japan, causing many businesses to slow down to the point that they needed to lay off some employees to keep their businesses moving forward. Frictional unemployment is the recent graduates seeking work, those who have just resigned from their jobs and are looking for new ones. and contractors who are waiting for a new job. When there are many jobs available but the jobless are unable to apply for them, this is referred to as frictional unemployment. This type of unemployment is caused by the economic downturn and crisis. This type of unemployment was just temporary. It occurs when people are fresh out of school or university and looking for work, or when people are leaving a job in pursuit of something better. Although unemployment has decreased, it has not been reflected in the buying power of those who are employed. Because of the nominal wage structure, this is the case. Japan's nominal wage structure has not increased to a level that provides low positive inflation rates as it has in the United States, United Kingdom, and Germany.
Next is the effect of inflation and unemployment for Japan country in terms of social and economically. The current inflation effects in terms of social and economy is related to a decrease in savings and unequal income distribution. This is significant because when the buyer's purchasing power falls, the quantities of savings will decrease because they need more money to spend, which the buyers prefer cash over savings. Moreover, when a fixed-wage employee loses money due to inflation, there is uneven distribution of income. This is due to rises in the overall price level of everyday needed commodities such as food, essential items, oil and gas, which the people must purchase. Other than that, they require more money to purchase goods and services than previously. This is the beginning of an entrepreneur to gain more from inflation because higher prices and demands for goods and services will make them more profitable. According to the data from 2015 to 2020, the unemployment rate will be lower, which in the year 2020, Japan has experienced 2.34% of unemployment rate. Unemployment has negative consequences because it causes a loss of work skills, a loss of a source of income, and slowing economic progress. These issues are connected to the COVID-19 pandemic. Many nations also have been affected by COVID-19 pandemic. In addition to prevent the spread of COVID-19 infection, Japan's economy has been temporarily shut down. As a result of COVID-19 pandemic, many individuals have lost their employment. Due to their unemployment, they lost their self-esteem, which may lead them to social trouble and mental health issues. Lastly, unemployment can also occur due to the continuing structural reforms and companies restructuring. As a result, a number of people will face job loss as the companies implement the restructuring. Besides that, the high unemployment rate will lead the government to get less taxation income. But we'll have to pay more for the current employees' benefits.
Okay, and now we go for Japan plan in solving the inflation and unemployment using monetary policy in 2020. Okay, so due to COVID-19 that has occurred worldwide in 2020, the Bank of Japan has made a powerful monetary easing that has been the plan since March using the three measures to control their inflation and unemployment rate. The first one is special program to support financing in response to the novel coronavirus COVID-19 to provide support mainly for corporate financing. The second one is maintaining the active purchases of exchange trade funds (ETF) and Japan Real Estate Investment Trust (JREITs) for lowering risks. Last but not least is flexible and adequate provision of funds with the primary purpose of purchasing Japanese government bonds, JGBs, and managing the United States US dollar fund supplying operation. This is to ensure the stability of financial market. With the COVID-19 that is still very active in 2020, for Japan, maintaining the stability in financial market and supporting corporate finance has been very important in conducting a monetary policy for Japan. For Japan, supporting corporate finance are to prevent firms and sole proprietors from getting affected by COVID-19 from going through difficulties in financing and to providing an environment where the firms and sole proprietors can quickly restart their business. Besides that, Japan has been trying to escape the vicious cycle between turmoil in financial market and deterioration in the real economy by maintaining stability in financial market at a time of crisis. Therefore, we can conclude that Japan will lead to achieving the stability of the inflation rate, while it can drop the unemployment rate. Even though it will take time, monetary easing measures that have been introduced before in 2013, which is quantitative and qualitative easing, has given a positive effect, coupled with the government actions and efforts by financial institutions. Even though global finance are still nervous, but the tension has been eased. The environment for external funding, like bank borrowing, issuance of CP, and corporate bonds have remained at a lower rate. With that, it has helped in corporate financing. In the COVID-19 era, there have been various uncertainties in Japan that could have led Japan to instability in the financial market. With that, the bank has considered firmly managing current monetary easing through the three measures that have been mentioned just now. Therefore, for the time being, the bank will closely monitor the impact of COVID-19 on their economic and financial activities, while Japan will not hesitate to take additional monetary easing measures if required.
Fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is the use of government income collection, taxes or tax cuts, and expenditure to impact a country economy, be it in economics or political science. Fiscal policy is founded on the belief of British economist named John Maynard Keynes. He hypothesized that changes in government taxation and expenditure may have an impact on aggregate demand and economic activity. The combination of these policies allow this government to target inflation, which is deemed healthy when it stays between 2% and 3%, while also increasing employment. It also aims to keep GDP growth between 2% and 3% and the unemployment rate between 4% and 5%, which is close to the natural rate. This means that fiscal policy is utilized to maintain economic stability throughout the business cycle. Fiscal policy in Japan. The Ministry of Finance regulated the allocation of resources in the economy, influenced the distribution of income and wealth among citizens, stabilized the level of economic activity, and promoted economic growth and welfare through its supervision of these sectors. The Ministry of Finance was essential since Japan's post-war economic development. It argued for a growth-first approach, with a high proportion of government spending going to capital accumulation and minimal overall government spending, which kept both taxes and deficit spending low, allowing more money to be invested privately. The majority of Japanese people save money in postal savings account. Because it prepares the national budget each year, the Ministry of Finance budget bureau is at the center of the political process. Because of this obligation, it is the ultimate target of interest groups and other ministries vying for the limited finance. The budgeting process usually begins shortly after the beginning of a new fiscal year on April 1st. The Policy Research Council consults with ministries and government agencies while preparing budget requests. Budget Bureau examines this proposal in great detail in the fall of each year, while top Ministry of Finance officials figure out the broad picture of the new budget and tax revenue distribution. Individual budget members fight for their constituency, and various ministries for modification and supplemental allocation throughout the winter months following the release of the ministry draft budget. The coalition leaders and officials from the Ministry of Finance consult on final draft budget, which is usually passed by the Diet's members in late winter. Individual direct members is Japanese Congress. Unemployment and inflation in Japan. Cost push and demand pull are the two primary causes of inflation. The former refers to an increase in the cost of production which result in a price increase, whereas the latter refers to an increase in aggregate demand, and as a result of change in consumption, investment, and government spending. The Japanese population has aged considerably in the previous 2 decades, resulting in a decrease in the labor force. The amount of money spent on goods and future revenue, the amount of unemployment has decreased since the early 2000, which result in higher CPI data due to increased demand and pay. However, this is not the case. However, unemployment rose to 5.1% in 2009, remained unchanged in 2010, and then fell to 4.9% in 2011. Although the unemployment has decreased, it has not been reflected in the spending power of those who are employed. Because of the nominal pay structure, this is the case. When it comes to economic essential variable, Japan is one of the leaders. Its unemployment rate, for example, is lower than that of major industrial and growing countries. The Japanese work ethic is well known around the world, and it is associated with a strong commitment to the company and the task at hand. Competitiveness among co-workers and loyalty to the firm are prevalent and encouraged, and working hours and overtime are considered excessive. The Japanese language even has a word for sudden death caused by overwork called karoshi. Japan's nominal wage structure has not improved to the point where low positive inflation rates are assured. Only declining nominal wage opened the floodgates to a deflationary trend that is damaging. Despite the fact that nominal salaries have stopped increase since 2005, they have only increased marginally since then.
So the conclusion for this assignment is Japan is a huge country with a large population that must be accounted for. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, Japan had a prosperous country. In terms of GDP, Japan is only surpassed by the United States and China, making it the world's third largest economy. Japan's gross domestic product has been stable during the last decade. The second one of conclusion is even if numbers and financial performance of companies cannot forecast the future, the Japanese economy should extrapolate what could happen and consider both good and bad aspects of the situation. In this research, market performance of the Japanese economy was laid out, evaluated and assessed, as well as recommendation to assist them enhance their market operations. That's all. Thank you.
That's all from our group members. Thank you very much for watching these presentations.